My name is Jessie, and today I'm discussing my cultural artifact, which is my sewing machine. My addiction of sewing began before my first sewing machine was even purchased, due to my late grandmother's passion of sewing. My grandmother began sewing when she was about 18 as a seamstress in a factory there in El Paso, and she did this to help support her family at the time. And this is before she was married. Once she was married, at about 21, she quit her job and began to take care of her family full time. My grandma had sewed all of her life, and she had six children and low income, so she would make the entire family outfits out of an entire roll of fabric. Now, she was so talented in sewing that she did not need to take any measurements of her children or even of myself. My last gift from my grandmother, in fact, was a dress that she had sewed for me. She had sewed also a nightgown for me and a blanket at the time that I can actually remember and still have today. But my grandmother and I had quite a different relationship than most grandparents do. We actually had a language barrier. She only spoke Spanish, and I'm still barely learning it. So, when we were able to connect, it was typically over what she would sew for me. And when I was about 14, I actually really got into sewing in order to connect with that side of her. And so, what had happened was I just picked up needle and thread and began sewing my own bags for family and friends. And by the time I bought my own house, my mother bought me a new sewing machine for myself. My grandmother's sewing machine is still within the family, but it's on our eldest aunt's side there, so I won't unfortunately ever get that. But I do try to connect with my grandmother through my own sewing machine and my own sewing projects. Uh, by the time that I began to research sewing simple projects, I was trying to figure out how to sew my own clothes. And my mother had seen that and helped me do that by pulling out some of my grandmother's old sewing patterns. My grandmother had these patterns left over from when she was a seamstress and had used them for her children and for myself even. Uh, and I made these different kinds of shirts and things like that. I no longer fit in them, unfortunately, but they are of my grandmother's designs and making there. When after I had moved into my house, there is not a day that goes by that I don't use my sewing machine, which is behind me, a little bit behind my couch. But it's one of the ways that I connect to my mother, to my mother's mother there. And my connection to my grandmother has, in fact, deepened even through her not being here anymore. That I get to connect with her on such a level that we have the same passion. But that is my cultural artifact is my sewing machine due to my grandmother. So yeah.